Live from our 7 Tasmania studios, your nightly news with Rachel Williams begins now.
Good evening, everyone. Tasmania has been hit by another day of heavy campaigning ahead of Saturday's federal election, with both the Prime Minister and Labor leader visiting Launceston and the Northwest. For more now, we're joined by reporter Sean McComish. Sean, how did the day play out?
Rachel, politics is indeed a funny game. Today, both sides promised millions for Launceston's Albert Hall and a northern community hub. Labor made its $20 million announcement earlier this afternoon, but without Bill Shorten, who was in the state. Now, earlier we caught up with Prime Minister Scott Morrison to talk about the final days of the campaign. Prime Minister, thank you for your time. Talk us through the extra funding the federal government will be providing to the Launceston City deal.
Yeah, well, there's two parts of it. There's $15 million we're putting into the Northern Suburbs Community Hub, and that's providing a range of sporting facilities, BMX and so on. It's supporting things like PCYC and providing those meeting and mentoring rooms for community organisations. This is a part of Launceston that does need better facilities and support, particularly for its young people, to have those facilities, to engage them and to give them the best possible start and give them a bit of a leg up. The other part is the $10 million we're putting into the Albert Hall. This is one of the magnificent buildings of Launceston. There are plenty of them, and it's a place of majestic heritage.
But is Hobart the only capital city that you haven't visited since the election was called?
I haven't got down to Hobart, but you wouldn't expect that. There are no seats in Hobart which you'd say were close. The seats that are close are up here in the north of Tasmania. It's the same reason why I've been in many of these seats late in the election.
But half of Tasmania does live in Hobart. They'd be feeling very left out from what you've just said.
Well, when you're campaigning close to an election, you'll go to the places that ultimately are going to decide the course of how the government will be formed after the next election. I don't think there's anything unusual about that. There are large parts of the country, and there are only so many places you can get to in this last week. And in this last week, what I'm saying to people in Bass and in Braddon is this is a very close election. And you will have an important role to play in making the choice, not just for who to best represent you, whether it's Bridget Archer here in Bass or Gavin Pearce in Braddon, but that choice will indeed determine who the next Prime Minister will be and whether Labor's reckless spending will start again and Labor's reckless taxes will slow you down.
Prime Minister, we better leave it there. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks very much.
Now, of course, Bill Shorten was also in Bass and Braddon overnight. Let's have a look now at how Labor spent the day campaigning. Bill Shorten finds a fitting way to quench his campaign thirst.
Yeah, could I have a Morrison's, thank you? Certainly can. What are you having? I'm having a ginger beer.
As Labor makes its blitz on Bass in the final desperate days of the 2019 election.
Bill Shorten, the next Prime Minister!
Today saw the Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister and the man who wants to be next all in Tassie. Mr Shorten spoke with cancer patients in Burnie while continuing his attacks on coalition hospital funding.
Tasmania, the effect of the medical crisis is catastrophic. The longest waiting times for elective surgery, for emergency treatment.
In Braddon, the Prime Minister paved the way with $40 million to fix congestion on the Bass Highway between Cooey and Wynyard.
It's like a surgeon that's operating on the road network of our country and ensuring we're dealing with the blockages and the problems that are holding Australians back.
While in Lyons, the Nationals dug up cash of their own to handle heavy freight on the Illawarra Road at Perth.
It's another $64 million in road upgrades here on Illawarra Main Road to get people home sooner and safer.
Just 4 more days until one side tastes victory.
Cheers, guys.
Sean McComish, 7 Tasmania News.
A New South Wales Greens candidate has resigned over controversial claims regarding the Port Arthur massacre. David Paul claimed on social media Martin Bryant wasn't responsible for the killings. Tasmanian Greens Senator Nick McKim said the comments were appalling.
Those comments have got no place in our party or any other political party, and it's entirely appropriate that he has stood down.
He said the party would examine its candidate vetting processes following Saturday's federal election. Back home, and residents of Nelson will find out later tonight who will be their Legislative Council representative. Counting resumed today in what's been a tight race to the top job following the May 4 election. As the cut-up of preferences continues, a short time ago it was tightly fought contest between the top three candidates: independent anti-pokies campaigner Meg Webb, independent wilderness advocate Vicar Bailey and Liberal candidate Nick Street. While the federal election has taken over the political spotlight, a brawl is brewing behind the scenes over next week's state budget. Advocates fear Tasmania's health system will not receive adequate funding, and they warn it could lead to chaos in struggling hospitals.
Counting down to budget day. Next week, the Tasmanian government will release its spending plan for the next 4 years. But concerns are already being raised about whether enough money has been set aside for hospitals.
The system needs a bit over $2 billion this year in the health portfolio just to keep going at its current level of dysfunction.
More patients than ever before are passing through Tasmania's hospital doors. This analyst is worried about the consequences if funding does fall short.
That sort of black hole in the budget cannot be achieved without further service downgrades, hundreds more patients being turned away, and staff sackings.
But the Premier is adamant the system will be adequately funded.
Our record demonstrates increased health funding since we've come into government, so we are doing more to meet increasing demand.
Last year, the government injected an urgent $105 million into hospitals 5 months after the budget. Advocates saying spending will need to continue to grow to keep up with rising demand. All will be revealed when the budget is handed down on May 23. Michelle Wisby, 7 Tasmania News.
Wildlife rehabilitators have breathed a sigh of relief today after successfully releasing 2 eagles back into the wild near South Arm. Raptor Refuge has cared for the majestic birds for months and says it's now up to the animals to find themselves a home.
A father and son clutching precious cargo. Contained inside these tubes, a juvenile sea eagle and a wedge-tailed eagle. They're about to be released back into the wild following rehabilitation, but a suitable position needs to be found first.
They'll fly well, and we're just looking to see if there's any other birds, and hopefully there's no territorial eagles ready to nail them.
The juvenile was injured from a power line. When it arrived, it couldn't walk or fly. The wedge-tail probably suffering the same fate. Both endangered species nursed back to health at Raptor Refuge. Now the time's come to fly home.
You nervous?
Yep.
Spreading their wings, the countdown is on. After 5 months in rehabilitation, the juvenile quickly finds its wings.
1, 2, 3.
The wedge-tail takes a bit more coaxing.
Good luck, darling. Count 3. 1, 2, 3.
But soaring the skies around South Arm, the job is done.
It's just such a good feeling. Adrenaline, everything's running through you.
Both birds released here today now have a big job ahead of them. They have to find a place that they can call home and possibly a mate.
Clearly they were happy, they flew off beautifully, they soared well, and they were just loving the wind and the conditions, and it's just what it's all about. It's fantastic stuff.
The constant threat of power lines, poison and loss of habitat means injured eagles are increasingly common.
Sadly, a lot of them can't get back out there, so to have success, a small success but a success as it is, yes.
Now, global travel company Abercrombie & Kent have committed to support the work of the organisation. It's the only partnership in Australia.
We really care about endangered species and pristine landscapes, so it's really special.
And with 16-year-old Ziggy following in Dad's footsteps, hopefully there'll be more birds returning home just like today.
Well done, Zig.
Louise Hedger, 7 Tasmania News.
An interactive program is taking the idea of an operating theatre to the next level. Doctors and actors are combining their skills to play out potentially dangerous situations in a bid to help GPs prepare for the real world.
From dealing with seizures to treating third-degree burns, the state's GPs see it all.
need something for the pain.
And it's simulated situations like these which better prepare them for real life.
You can learn it all from books, you can learn it all from videos and from YouTube, but until you're actually confronted with a new patient who is in distress or has a health problem, it's not real until that happens.
The 2019 program is based in Launceston, testing 28 Tasmanian GPs with some intense acting.
We get a little sheet that may be 5 or 6 pages long with a background history of the patient, what's happening, why they've come to see the GP and what they want out of the consult, what they want to walk away with.
We had some of the supervisors yesterday of the new doctors in tears because the actors were so very good at what they were doing.
And with Rosehaven's Katie Robinson, a former actor in the program, it's not only the doctors who benefit from the experience.
It's been of great benefit to the actors. Some have gone on to national careers.
It's given me an appreciation for what the GP does every single day, because they don't know what's about to walk into their room, but they do it, you know, with their hand on their hearts, and they're doing it out of the love of what they do.
Jessie Gilmore, 7 Tasmania News.
Hobart Airport says travellers should soon notice a marked decrease in the amount of injured or dead wildlife along the road into the airport, thanks to the installation of virtual fencing. The airport is adopting the technology after it proved to successfully reduce roadkill when used elsewhere in the state.
The Tasmania Devils are preparing for their toughest test this NAB League season when they take on ladder leaders, the Dandenong Stingrays, this Saturday. But coach Adrian Fletcher says confidence is at an all-time high in the camp after coming back from 10 points down in the dying minutes of last weekend's clash with the Pioneers in Bendigo to record a thrilling 2-point win on the Siren.
We showed composure, resilience, belief, and that was probably the pleasing factor for the team.
This Saturday's match with the Stingrays will be played as a curtain raiser to the AFL clash between North Melbourne and Sydney at Blunston Arena. Well, after struggling to attract the same amount of support as other sports in recent years, Hockey Tasmania is keen to turn the tables, with the organisation set to ramp up its push to receive a bigger share of the state government's funding pie. With millions of dollars poured into football and cricket each year, Hockey Tasmania is fed up with having to settle for the scraps.
You need to stop acting, behaving like a non-tier 1 sport, I think, and that's why we want to set our plan, our long-term vision for our sport, set a lot higher, set the bar higher.
The state's peak hockey body is currently putting the finishing touches on its 10-year vision, which it hopes will finally bring it into line with other codes as a Tier 1 sport, allowing it greater access to government funding.
It's an Olympic sport which you can play, you know, you've got the pathways all the way to the Olympics, I think, which is a lot of other sports don't have that ability. We need to have more discussions with government, less surprises, and really work with them in regards to what our aspirations are moving forward.
The organisation says it's also working to make Tasmania a go-to destination for international hockey events, seeking funding to upgrade the Tasmanian Hockey Centre's main pitch in Hobart to make it globally certified.
We've just got to reset our profile and really push harder within the community and just start telling our story better to attract new entrants into our sport.
Meantime, University is confident it can recover from a slow start to the Premier League season as it prepares to take on competition heavyweights OHA this weekend. The side has just 1 win from 7 matches, but its goalkeeper is adamant they'll be right up there come the pointy end of the season.
I don't think we're far. We've got a young squad, but we've been training really hard, and I think we've really got a good team spirit this year, and that's really compounded us to winning some games, and we're progressing quite well, so we'll see.
Good evening. Close to average temperatures today as the westerly winds sustained the showers over the west and far south. Hobart and Burnie 15 degrees, Launceston 16, Devonport recorded 17 degrees, which was the state's top, shared with Friendly Beaches, St Helens and Flinders Island. King Island, Low Head and Grove on 15 degrees, Ouse and Strawn reached 14. Low cloud over the state today, however the northeast had clear skies for most of the day as well. More low cloud is moving over our way across the bight. The tropical activity is evident over North Queensland, with onshore cloud over the eastern states. Tomorrow a high becomes more dominant over southeast Australia with a trough through inland Queensland. The winds westerly again, 15 to 25 knots, reaching 30 knots over the south in the morning, but easing over the east and west later, swells to 3.5 metres. A strong wind warning is current for waters between Tasman Island and Low Rocky Point. Hobart 17 tomorrow and partly cloudy, a shower or two for Geefston, 16 the top, cloudy for Bothwell 15. Launceston tomorrow 18 the high, morning fog then mostly sunny, partly cloudy for Devonport on 17 degrees, 16 for Cressy after a morning fog patch. Partly cloudy for Burnie, 16 the top, 15 for Strawn and Curry with a few showers. And for St Helens tomorrow sunny and 18 also for Swansea, partly cloudy for Orford and 17 degrees. On Thursday, light showers over the west, far south and Bass Strait. Fine elsewhere after morning fog. Fine for most of the day on Friday, exception being the west coast where a light shower is expected. And on Saturday, showers over the west and south, otherwise fine. Winds shifting southerly in the afternoon. Sunny and 27 in Perth tomorrow. Fine for Adelaide. Cloudy and cooler in Melbourne, just 17 there tomorrow. A morning frost for Canberra. A shower for Brisbane. Darwin, sunny and 33. Mostly clear, 13 in Hobart, 10 degrees right now in Launceston and 12 in Devonport. There's only one thing worse than the Swans doing poorly, and that's having a studio full of Collingwood supporters. It's going to be a long season, Rach.
It is indeed. Thank you very much for that, Murph. Well, that's all your news for now. I'll be back later with updates. Thanks for joining us. Good night.
2, 3.